we're a fund that is very unusual. We fund grassroots organizations working to transform the criminal justice system, and we do that with activists, donors, grantees, and all of us working together. People who are impacted by the system. We only fund organizations led by impacted people. And why, you may ask, is that organization here? Well, the reason is because what's very important for us, what we have to remember, is our history. We need to remember that Brooklynites were at the forefront of supporting freedom, that they were at the forefront of putting their lives on the line to ensure that people who were enslaved, whose complete human rights were absolutely denied them, were able to come to freedom. They were supporting that work, not only as people on the Underground Railroad, the Truesdales, Harriet and Thomas Truesdell, who owned this house, but also they were speaking out. They were holding mock auctions at the church nearby. The tunnel, they believe, that's still here in this building, used to go all the way to that church and to other homes on this block. The reason that it's so important for us to remember that is because right now, we are facing unjust laws. Yes, right now, we have people who are being denied their freedom. Right now, we are snatching children from their mother's arms. And so it's really critical for us to remember that we fought this. We, black people in the United States, abolitionists, white people who are abolitionists, Brooklynites, we fought against injustice, and we need to recall that. We need to be teaching our children that. We need to be bringing them in here and showing them the tunnel that used to save people who would otherwise be in the bowels of hell, which is slavery. And so it's critical for us to be part of reminding the people of New York, the people of Brooklyn, the people of this country, the people of the world, that resistance matters and that it changed the course of history. If we don't know our history, then we are doomed to repeat it. Most of you here probably didn't know much about 227 Duffield and the Truesdells. And what is happening? We are doomed to repeat it. It is happening on the border. It is happening in prisons all over this country. That is a legacy of slavery, the same thing these people were fighting against. And so it's critical for us to continue to keep this here. This is the only house left on a block that was named Abolitionist Place. Abolitionist Place because it was full of homes of people of different races who were working together to end slavery. And we have one house left. We have to fight to maintain it because these hotels and these high rises, these are not going to remind us of who we are and what our collective memory is and what our collective history is and what type of people we want to be. I just want us to recall that there were people who were free who were also snatched by those folks who were coming up north and taking them back down into slavery. There were people who had struggled through the Underground Railroad and gotten here, and then they were going to be snatched. And these people said, no, I'm going to use my own home as a place where they can find harbor, where they can find safety, where they can find freedom for their families. And so I think that is something that's critical for us to remember. That's something that's critical for us to remind each and every one of us about. And that's something that I'm sure, were this a museum, we would be bringing our children to see. And people who would come to this city would be fascinated to learn that this was a beacon of freedom in this country, a beacon of freedom in New York City. And so that's why we're here, because they're trying to erase our history. And when they erase your history, they erase who you are. They erase who you are. And so it's critical for us to remember that history. I also want it to be really, really clear. All we need is the Landmarks Preservation Commission to put a date on the calendar and say we're going to look into the history of this place. That's all we need. For them to stop the demolition of this building. That's all we need. And so if you have not yet done so, please sign the petition, which will be taken to the Executive Director of the Landmarks Preservation Commission. And if you have not done so already, call up the Landmarks Preservation Commission, because they're not used to receiving the types of responses that we've been generating with regard to the preservation of a building in Brooklyn. And so we can make it happen. We can make it happen. The reason we're even in this position is because the city held a very shady process some years ago under the Bloomberg administration. And they hired a firm that was supposed to look into the history of this building. And what happened is the firm testified before the city council and lied. They said, oh, we spoke to this historian, that historian, and the other historian, and they all said, no, it doesn't have any historical significance. The only problem is, the next thing you know, all those historians came forward and said they never talked to us. The people who own the house said they never came and saw the tunnel, they never came and saw about the history of this place. If that is the type of process that's going to be determining what happens in our city, and we leave it alone, basically what we're saying is, unlike the people of Puerto Rico who said, no, you cannot continue to abuse us and talk about us and laugh about our history and can remain governor. Unlike them, we're going to say, we will not take it. We will not take it. We will have a real, a fair, and a just process to look into the history of this building. Because if we don't, there's going to be some hell to pay.
Right.